Hey family, welcome to episode 1 of the Maron Project. My name is Gerald Dagger. Tonight with us we have the Levar Parkinson. Levar, I am beyond excited and honored to have you here.
Yeah, same here, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Glad somebody wants to hear me speak, right?
Absolutely. And before we jump into it, I do want to level set to ensure we remember why we are here. So the Maron Project is all about storytelling and ensuring that we elevate the voices of marginalized communities in a way that allows for people to learn and gain an understanding of who we are and what we do in the communities that we all live and operate in. So with that in mind, Levar, my brother, tell the people about you.
Oh man, where do I start? Well, I was born of two Jamaican immigrant parents in New York. Moved to South Florida as a young kid, so grew up in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale. Went to college in North Florida, and after that, started a career in consumer insights, analytics, and marketing. And I've been doing that for a little over a decade now. So started with the Nielsen company, and now with the Coca-Cola company in market research and marketing.
And I mean, those aren't massive names at all, right? Like Nielsen and Coca-Cola. And thinking through that, like, was that where you thought you would be?
No. I mean, when I was 16 and I was thinking about where my life should go, where I wanted to go, it was really, I got the entrepreneurial bug. And I actually wanted to be a fast food franchisee. And I still want to do that, still want to be a franchisee. I probably think I would have done that a lot earlier, younger, but life didn't pan out that way. But I knew that I would at least be doing something that I'm proud of, which I am today.
And thinking about that desire to be a fast food franchisee, I know people are walking into this without much context. You mentioned Coca-Cola, you mentioned Nielsen, but do you mind sharing with the people where you and I met?
Yeah, man. So we actually met at McDonald's, which was my first job. I was a bright-eyed 16-year-old, and Gerald was manager. A damn good manager.
You don't have to tell the people that. You don't have to tell the people that, Levar. Look, we worked at McDonald's. Yes, I was a manager. Yes. Nah, but yeah. It has been a journey, man. So can you help me walk from McDonald's to Coca-Cola? Like, what did that journey look like, especially for where you are today? I feel like there's a large distinction and belief and understanding of, cool, being a black kid working at McDonald's, common. Having the role that you have today and being a black face in these environments, in these professional spaces, not as common. So can you help us navigate that?
Yeah, so one word comes to mind when you ask that question is intentional. I was truly intentional. So earlier I mentioned that I didn't think I would be here at this moment, not because of the nature of the role or the company, but just because of timing. But where I wanted to be was truly intentional. So, when I was figuring out what I want to do with my life at 16, and I was inspired by the operations of McDonald's, just meeting the owner operator of our McDonald's that owned 30 McDonald's in South Florida, meeting him on a couple of occasions and seeing the type of car he drove every different time he came to the store. And I was just 16 and like, wow, there's something behind these burgers and fries that we aren't talking about, that especially my community isn't talking about. And that's what really inspired me. Like, it was, and that's when I learned about what franchising was, and fell in love with the aspect of being able to own a large brand or license a large brand, and be able to use the rights and make your American dream come true. Now, when I did get hit with that inspiration, I was intentional about reaching that goal. So in doing a lot of research, I'm like, okay, gonna go to school, gonna major in business, I'm gonna stay with McDonald's. That means when I come home for summer break, I'm gonna keep working and try to go for an internship. This is even before I knew that they even offered an internship program. But the point was, I put out in the atmosphere what I wanted because I had a very, very clear goal for my life from that moment moving forward. And so after graduation, I was actually supposed to continue working for McDonald's on the corporate side in operations. But then I took another internship with Nielsen, really enjoyed that summer. I was actually interning supporting Georgia Pacific, which is the third largest paper company in the world. But when I got the full-time offer, Coca-Cola was an option. And the way I saw it, Coca-Cola and McDonald's hand in hand. I was still in the food industry. I was still in the food service industry. And that's why I chose that opportunity. So the point is, I had a clear goal in mind, and I made decisions that aligned with that goal, and that's why I am where I am today.
So what's your title today, if you don't mind me asking, of course?
Today, Director of Customer Strategic Insights in our restaurant division, which means that we just help. We 2/3 or more of restaurants in the US pour Coca-Cola. You really only got two options: Coca-Cola, Pepsi, in terms of who's pouring your beverages. We have a large majority of restaurants that choose us. So I'm helping to support our customer partners in data, insights, markets to sell more beverages at their restaurants.
All right. And thinking about, where you were working at McDonald's, and we were back there doing 49-cent hamburgers, 59-cent cheeseburgers, or like the tax day where you buy a Big Mac, get one for a penny. Were you thinking about, the Black experience while working at McDonald's at that point?
I was, actually, because what inspired me at 16 was a combination of things. It was the perfect time for me to be hit with some inspiration, both good and bad. But the biggest thing that shaped my goal was actually a pretty bad story. But my older brother, he wasn't that encouraging, right? So he was under the impression that we were under a generational curse, and I wouldn't graduate high school because of that curse, because my parents didn't, and I couldn't help it, and we were just destined to fail. And that was something that really I needed to hear that at that time, because it was that and a combination of other things that allowed me to say, oh, well, let me prove you wrong. Life is what you make it, and it's about your mindset. And so where the Black experience comes in is that it allowed me to reflect on our community and question why we tended to be in the state that we were in economically in our area, right? South Florida, if you go through certain areas, you're down in Deep Side and Sistrunk, the rougher inner city areas versus you driving through Parkland. So it was just the right time for me to be able to take an objective view at my surrounding, in addition to the mindset of my older brother that wasn't all that comforting and encouraging, and also the owner operator of our McDonald's, right? And to learn a little bit about his story and how he got where he got to, and the legacy that he was building. So it was just everything came together perfectly at the right time, at the right age, and the right point in my life that I need to hear it in order for a light to turn on and for me to push towards something greater.
And a really interesting point that you touched on, I think in passing in that story, is like your parents didn't exceed a certain level of education, right? And you made it to a spot to, where you are today which you're basically saying you didn't have any handouts. Like, I want to make that clear, because I think a lot of times people will look at people in specific roles and go, well, somebody gave them something. And that may not always be the case.
Yeah, no. It's so true. And, but I also want to be very careful with this response, because, and this might be a bit controversial. I think as Black people, we tend to celebrate a struggle story. And all the world, everyone likes a underdog story, right? So to some degree, we all fall victim to it. But I think particularly for Black people, we kind of romanticize the struggle story of I came from nothing, or I came from the struggle and whatnot. When in actuality, if you compare lower middle class or lower class in America to true lower class in some of the countries that I've experienced, it's first world problems. So not belittle my experiences, but I don't want to give too much. I don't want to give it more glory than it already has, or more power than it already. But yeah, it's your normal. The point I want to emphasize on that is that my upbringing was very average. Whether it's lower middle class, that's a large percentage of Americans, or lower class, definitely not like middle class, but lower middle class and lower class is still a very large percentage of Americans, meaning a lot of people experience the same thing that I experienced. So the point is, I don't have a special gift, and I'm not different than whoever's watching this podcast. But it's really just the shift in the mindset that allows me to move towards something greater. Long-winded.
I respect and believe that wholeheartedly. Now, thinking about that mindset, and I don't think we ever really forget that we're Black. At least I know I don't. I would hope that you don't. If you do, we should probably speak about that offline.
Yeah.
But what is that mindset as you navigated through your professional career? Like, what was that level of awareness? Was it something where, and working at Coca-Cola rather, being in the Atlanta area has a relatively higher population of African Americans, but in the business space, is that reflected?
Oh man, great question, man. So South Florida has a heavy Caribbean presence, right? So you see your people. Atlanta, I think Metro Atlanta is 60%, right? Black. It's one of the blackest cities. And so you see the full spectrum, right? You see the impoverished, and I mean, pretty significantly, and you see what you can aspire to be as well. And so that representation is important. But the context is also important, right? We're still just somewhere between 13 and 15% of this country. And so if you compare that to the percentage we make up of corporate America, white collar jobs, even lower percentage overall. So we're actually still underrepresented technically in corporate America as well, even in Atlanta, right?
That's wild.
Yeah, seriously. And so I don't want to make it seem like, we're living in Wakanda in the corporate. And honestly, I don't think our community talks about the Black experience in corporate America as much as we talk about the Black experience elsewhere either. But it's definitely different. And then considering the climate that we're in now with this hyper focus and misinformation on DEI, it's just it kind of puts a spotlight on that as well. But yeah, it's but it is nice to be in a city where your police officers are Black and your TSA welcome you, the folks who welcome you to the city from the airport are Black, and it is refreshing, I say.
And When you think about that experience in like your day-to-day life, does that play a role in how you approach your job and how you interact with your stakeholders, customers, internal teams, or whatever the case may be?
100%. 100%, man. It's almost sometimes, man, it's almost tormenting because you feel like you have to play a certain role to make the majority feel comfortable, right? You gotta talk a certain way that's not really natural to how you talk, or be interested in things. But also, I'd go as far as saying that everyone in corporate America is kind of doing that to some degree. Maybe black people a little bit more than other races. Um,
It
yeah, yeah.
I was just going to say like the fact that you point out like you speak differently, you act differently, and even for me last night, Colleen, my wife and I went out to a steakhouse about 20 minutes away from Mar-a-Lago, and after about 15-20 minutes, I realized I was very uncomfortable. And it wasn't because of anything anybody else was doing in the room. The only two other black people in that room were servers. And when I realized it, like I was sitting up extra straight, my posture was pristine, and I'm doing all of these extra things. We're there to relax, we're there to have dinner, but I was there trying to fit in. And I had to question, well, why am I trying to fit into the room when I made it to the room without having to fit in? Like, it's such an interesting dynamic. And when you speak about code switching, like that's something that comes up, I know, for me in my role and the spaces that I've been in. But what does code switching mean for you? Do you find yourself having to code switch regularly? And I know you touched on like everybody has to do it to some degree, but what does that represent for you? What does code switching mean for Levar?
It can be exhausting, but like I said, I think everyone experiences it to some degree because there is a level of there's an element of that that's just professional,
Yeah.
and all adults are just big kids, right? When we get home from
Yeah.
work, we're all just big kids, right? So it's hard to delineate between the two, like just professionalism and code switching. But I think it's just a bit more extreme for us, just because we have to pivot a lot harder than our natural selves and our natural tone that was born out of our experience and our ancestry in America. But it really is just just adapting, playing the role, being interested in things that might not be all that interesting in my real life.
Yeah.
Playing the politics.
Absolutely. So I'm going to change pace and direction just a little bit. And earlier you spoke about, your life was average. Your upbringing and things aren't that different than many areas of like lower middle class and things of that nature. Now, if you're speaking to a kid who looked just like you, right? 16-year-old Levar just got a job at McDonald's. How do I get to where you are today?
Yeah. First off, it starts with believing that you can get to where I am today. It's when I think about where Black people are today, and taking the context how much our ancestors fought for us to have a level of equality or have the level of freedom that we have today. A lot of what they experienced in the 40s, 50s, 60s, we don't experience today. But the biggest problem we have is the mindset, right? You always hear like, oh, Black folks in the hood don't know any better. as if we're not critically thinking human beings, like as if we're lab rats or something. But it shows you how, like, the mental slavery that we're in, but it also shows you how important it is to have the right mindset. So the first thing I would say is to think differently where you can. And a lot of that comes with, if you have access to someone that you want to be a little bit more like in a positive light, talk to them. If you obviously you have access to books, get some inspiration from those people on what to read. I mean, you now you got the internet, right? So you can Google the top motivational books or bestsellers and start reading that. The other thing is, we forget that we're in school, and all of our faculty members, all of our teachers are college graduates, right? They've achieved something that only, what is it, a third of the US achieves. And we don't respect them or look at them as that. They're just, oh, this is your teacher. Talk to them, right? Like, they are all middle class, some upper middle class, and they have stories, and they're teaching because they want to give back, as well as make a living. I think that's overlooked in our community as well. So that's what I would say. I mean, just find folks who are where you want to be, talk to them, read books that speak to where you want to be, talk to those teachers, and hear their story and take their advice, and just be inspired, man.
I love that. And if we look at where you are today, of course, working at Coca-Cola, how supported and seen do you feel as a Black man working in corporate America by the organization that you work for? Like, I'm not going to put you on the spot with something wild, but companies either, pay attention or they don't pay attention. Some can walk the line. I think organizations have to code switch sometimes too, which we have seen quite a bit recently. Yeah.
So this is interesting. I'm a firm believer in performance, and I feel very, very supported and seen at Coca-Cola, and it's not done in a way of like uplifting people who aren't as talented or all the misinformation that people think DEI is. None of that. Truly performance. And so the charge that I give to my younger self, or to anyone listening to this or watching this, is you really have to perfect your craft and care about it. Like, there's 24 hours in a day. How bad do you want to be good at what you do? Right? Going above and beyond, learning more than your peers, more than your colleagues, being more than competent so that you can be more than confident. And so I say that to say, I feel supported at Coca-Cola, but it's also because I am truly a high performer at Coca-Cola. And because I put a level of care into what I do. And I'm willing to work long hours to get there, to be good at what I do, and learn and apply. So I do think, and I'm just speaking from my experience at the two companies I work for, but the three I work for, is if your performance is there, like truly, then the rest will speak for itself. If you're mediocre and you don't care as much and you're just trying to get over and you taking more vacation days than you should, and or whatever else you're doing
Yeah.
between you and someone else, then you know. But if you're a high
Yeah.
performer, anyway, it's gonna show.
And I want to make sure that people don't think that you're at work 24/7. So I'm going to ask you another question. For non-work purposes, how many countries have you been to, Levar?
25.
Okay.
25.
And I want to point that out, right? You spoke about working hard, being a high performer, and doing all these things, which, yeah, you have to work hard, but you work hard to play hard, right? And I want to also highlight that we weren't always like this, right? And for people who have, you're meeting Levar for the first time, and you may not even know about, my teenage years and childhood. There was a time that I poured liquid margarine all over Levar's car because we were going through a prank war, right? So you can still have fun. It's okay to have fun, right? And I think that mentality that you highlighted of, working hard and being a high performer, and coming from a background that is generally average, but you still have that sprinkle of, I understand that it's average, but it's still different because the Black experience is naturally different in the country that we live in or in the world that we operate in. But that mentality is exactly why, another just random surprise for anyone watching or listening, Levar is my youngest child's godfather. Right, because that mentality was something that was very important for me, and I didn't want to proliferate the mindset of, oh, you're Black, that's it, you're done, or you are from any marginalized community, so you're done. It is different. It's okay to be different, but it's not a death sentence. Right, there are still things that you have to do to ensure that you are heard and you are seen. And one thing that I respect about you a lot is looking at your life, from when we met to where you are now. There's this tone of like, it has all been Black. Like, there's Black excellence and the Black experience. And with that comes to like the next question as we come upon closing time soon. But you spoke about college a little bit, but you didn't tell the people where you went to college. And I think that's another important element of the story as well. So if you can dive a little bit into, where you went to school, why that was important for you, how that shaped and helped mold you. Because I know listening to you and watching you go there is something you were and still are very passionate about.
Oh man, yeah. And this is. I'm glad you asked this question because it's gonna tie back to how average I am, and I really want to get that point across to folks so that people don't think I'm special. You can do whatever you put your mind to if you put the work in and apply and work smart. But so FAMU is a school I chose to go to, Florida A&M University, which is a large historically Black university, founded in 1887. And so just think about back then when Black folks couldn't go to the same schools as white folks, and we aimed to educate ourselves, right? And so here's the funny thing though. When I decided finally that I was going to go to college, which was about my junior year or so, and I was like, okay, because before I was just going to go do music. That was my thing. Like, forget college. I want to sing, right?
Yeah.
I decided to go to college. I applied to 3 schools. It was FAU, didn't get in. UCF, didn't get in. And Florida A&M University. And I'm so glad they gave me a chance, because it was, oh my gosh, it was the perfect place to be. it taught me how to be resourceful, which is a skill. It is a
Yeah.
skill to. It taught me how to be resourceful because you had to be, and I think they do it on purpose because they understand how the experience is for us and what the real world is like. But like my professors definitely pushed me and challenged me, and allowed me to shine and find elements of myself that I didn't know existed. And that's what school is for. That's what college is for, right? You're in on a campus, a think tank of like-minded people who are aiming towards something. And then so our school of business and industry was, oh my gosh, top tier. We would wear suits every Wednesday. We had to ask these thought-provoking questions that we had to have prepared for what we called forum, where you had to have two premises and a follow-up question. You had to research the companies that were coming in. And all of these things are so important in corporate America. Like, I'll end by giving this example. We had a forum every Wednesday at FAMU. So we'd have like a corporate executive come speak to the entire school, and we're in suits. And every person had to have a question prepared for that executive, that so that we research the company, we understand the context of, so like a SWOT analysis. So you'd raise your hand and say, inflation is at all-time high. We saw that your company's earnings, and you missed earnings per share, blah, 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 blah. And then we ask the question, what are some strategies that you're taking in place to blah, 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 right? Here's the beautiful thing about that. In corporate America, when you are doing the same large as what FAMU call forum, and the people who ask those types of questions are your high performers. The light that puts on you as a strategic thought, a strategic thinker, when you ask a thought-provoking question in a large meeting, takes your career to the next level. And so, I really enjoy FAMU, man. Shout out to the Rattlers for sure. And I'm so glad I chose a historically Black university to attend, because it was just perfect to see people like me, the best of the best, striving towards greatness, and just be so inspired by that. And yeah, this it was great.
I love that. And as we wrap up, I just want to double back a little bit, right? So McDonald's not getting into two state schools, two public universities, going into FAMU, and remind the people of the title today one more time. What's the title? What's your job title?
Director, Customer Strategic Insights.
Love it. All right. And if the people want to learn more about you, Levar, or is it cool if they find you on LinkedIn? I will post the link on the video as you're watching this now. You'll probably see it here, somewhere. But are you cool with the people finding you on LinkedIn to learn more about your professional journey?
Absolutely, man. Levar Parkinson on LinkedIn. If you're a young professional, check out how my LinkedIn is organized. Don't sleep on LinkedIn. People are watching every piece of it. How you word things, even your intro. Check it out, man, for sure.
I love that. And any parting thoughts for anyone who may be watching, whether they're early career, mid career, or just trying to figure out just what it all means? Any parting thoughts for those folks?
Yeah, man, this is one of my favorite quotes. And actually, it's my quote, because I don't know anyone else that has said it, but I believe that the most successful people in business are the ones that can strike the right balance between understanding the most and simplifying the best. Who can understand the most and simplify the best. So understanding the most, meaning that you're leaving no stone unturned when tackling a problem, a business question, or learning your job, learning the ins and outs of how you do what you do, right? That means you're listening to the podcast, you're reading the articles, You're taking advantage of all the internal trainings. You're not missing the meeting. You're attentive. You're not wasting time on scrolling social media mindlessly. You're truly focused on understanding the most. And it's only when you truly understand that you can simplify it for everyone else. And when you can simplify it, that's when people just worship the ground you walk on. So I would charge everyone to kind of take that and focus on how can I understand the most and simplify the best. And I think that takes you to, and you can apply that anywhere in your life, really. And
I love that. Levar, my brother, thank you so much. I love you. To anyone watching, please listen, learn, and tune in next time for our next guest. Peace.
Thank you, man.